Number 1, and right off the bat, this is the second time, as far as I know, that Dave Filoni has referred to AHSOKA as a former Jedi Knight, the first time being in a tweet where he revealed AHSOKA and the Bendu had actually met not long before Ahsoka's duel with Vader in Rebels. The thing is though, AHSOKA never officially became a Jedi Knight. She would have become one if she'd agreed to rejoin the Jedi. She'd been expelled from the Order when they believed she'd bombed the Jedi Temple and also murdered a bunch of people. But she decided not to rejoin since she felt betrayed by her fellow Jedi. Number 2, this is a bit of a nitpick, but it stood out as being a bit odd to me. Can someone explain to me why First Officer Jensen Corbett here asks Captain Hale about the identity of the supposed Jedi? Why does she think he would know? Number 3, I guess it isn't just in the Halo TV show universe where the captain of a ship puts themselves unnecessarily into a potentially dangerous situation by personally meeting with an unknown visitor coming aboard their ship. Number 4, another nitpick, it took a while for these Republic guys to react when Shin Hati activated her lightsaber, I must say. Number 5, why not try shooting at his legs, you idiots? Why does it seem like you're intentionally shooting directly at his lightsaber? A lightsaber which Baylan Skoll realised to hold at right angles for some reason. Number 6. Oh my god, another map that leads to the location of someone who's disappeared. I know a lot of people got confused about the map to Luke Skywalker in The Force Awakens though, since if Luke didn't want to be found, then why did he leave a map behind that could lead people to him? Well, that wasn't actually the case. The map is just a location of where the first Jedi Temple is, and since that's where Luke disappeared to, then technically you could say it's a map to Luke Skywalker, just not specifically that it's a map to Luke Skywalker. The map in this show might work the same way, since we find out in episode 2 that the star map is compatible with the technology of an ancient people from a distant galaxy, making it likely that it was made by them. So it does seem to be more so just a map of how to get from the Star Wars galaxy to the map creator's home galaxy, rather than a map that was specifically made to lead people to the exact location of Thrawn. And before you argue that it must have actually been the Night Sisters who made the map because the temple it's found in is important in figuring out how to open it and it was a Night Sisters temple, I've already thought of that. My thinking is that the Night Sisters had either been told how to open it by the map's creators or have figured it out through trial and error, and just in case that knowledge was lost, they stored it in a temple built with clues on how to open it incorporated into its design. Number 7. Number 8. What the heck? He sounds just like Kylo Ren. Number 9, if these HK droids had been able to alter the timers on their self-destructs, Ahsoka would have been blown to bits and the show would have ended right here. Number 10, I wonder how Hu Yang, voiced by David Tennant, ended up with Ahsoka. The last time we saw him was in the 9th episode of Season 5 of The Clone Wars, all the way back in 20 BBY. The final episode of a 4-part story arc where Ahsoka escorts a bunch of younglings, one voiced by Jeff Fisher, to the planet Ilum, you know, the planet the First Order turned into Starkiller Base, to find kyber crystals for their lightsabers. After leaving Ilum, they are attacked by Hondo and his pirates. Ahsoka is captured and taken to Florum. The younglings, who have built their lightsabers, Hu Yang and R2-D2, go to rescue her. The Jedi and the pirates end up joining forces to rescue Hondo, who has been taken prisoner by General Grievous, and they all leave Florum. Number 11, for those who may not know, the word Fulcrum isn't the name of the ship Ahsoka and Hu Yang are on, but rather a code name used by Ahsoka and others. Originally, the word Fulcrum was the name of a subspace communications frequency used by Anakin Skywalker, but was adopted by Ahsoka after the rise of the Empire so as to keep her identity secret from them whilst working alongside the rebels. After Ahsoka's duel with Darth Vader and her presumed death, the codename was then also used by other rebel spies and operatives, most notably Imperial agent Alexander Callis, who had become disillusioned with the Empire, and rebel agent Cassian Andor. Number 12, yep, that is in fact Governor Ryder Azadi, who was voiced by Clancy Brown in the Rebels cartoon and is played here by him in live action. Number 13, well, would you look at that, Jai Kell all grown up, gone from Imperial cadet to rebel to now a senator representing Lothal. Number 14, the Spectre's mural here looks pretty identical to the one we see at the end of Rebels, though Zeb looks a little goofier in my opinion with his mouth being so low, and Hera's face has been noticeably altered. Number 15, I feel like the song Danger Zone would work quite well over this Sabine speeder bike stunt scene. I actually thought she was going to ramp up off of the ship's wing rather than slide underneath it. Number 16, I don't know about you guys, but I prefer how the CGI Lothcat looked in The Mandalorian over this puppet Lothcat. The Mandalorian Lothcat looked more cat-like to me. Number 17, this is, I believe, the first time in the Disney canon that we have heard about a human being a Night Sister. All the Night Sisters and Night Brothers we have seen so far have been Zabraks. It, however, wouldn't be the first time in Legends for a Night Sister to be human. The current canon has established that there are two types of Zabraks, the Iridonia Zabraks, who come from the Zabrak homeworld of Iridonia, and the Dathomir Zabraks, who are Zabraks that colonized the planet Dathomir. Sugi and Jedi Master Eth Koth are examples of Iridonia Zabraks, and Maul, Savage, Asaz Ventress, and Mother Talzin are examples of Dathomir Zabraks. They are the same species, they just look quite different from each other for some reason. Maybe because of generations of use of dark side magic by the Dathomir witches, I don't know. In Legends, however, it wasn't Zabraks that colonized Dathomir, but humans, and human women were the original witches of Dathomir. And then at some point, a ship of male Zabraks arrived on Dathomir. The male Zabraks and the female humans made eyes at each other, they mated, and bada bing bada boom, the first ever Zabrak human hybrids were born. And it was these hybrids that would come to be called Dathomirians, and humans and Dathomirians existed together all the way up until General Grievous's invasion of Dathomir, where he almost completely wiped out every single Dathomirian. This actually allowed the human population on Dathomir to increase, since when Mother Talzin united all the witch clans into her own Night Sisters, she had implemented a rule that human Night Sisters could only mate with Zabrak Night Brothers, increasing the Dathomirian population whilst decreasing the human. And yes, that does mean what you think it means. Maul, Ventress, Talzin, they are all in some part human. In fact, Maul and his two brothers, Savage and Feral, are actually half human, their mother being a human female called Kaisina, I think that's how you pronounce that, who first appeared in the Daft Plagueis novel and whose name was revealed in the short story Restraint. Ain't got no idea who the brothers' dads are though, since by Dathomirian tradition the father is sacrificed shortly after conception. Now, with all that being said, Morgan doesn't actually say she is a Night Sister, just that her ancestors were, though she doesn't say she isn't a witch when Shin calls her one. So it seems Dave Filoni might be trying to reincorporate the idea from Legends that humans and Zabrak can interbreed. I mean, interbreeding is something we've already seen in canon with Jek and Shea Loquain, children to female Twi'lek Sue Loquain and an unknown human male. Yeah, Cut is actually their stepdad, in case you didn't know. Jason Syndulla, son of female Twi'lek Hera Syndulla and human male Kanan Jarrus, and also shares a name with Jason Solo from Legends. And moving away from Twi'lek human hybrids, we also have Rystol Sant, I think is how you pronounce her name, who is a human Thelin hybrid. No idea though if it was the father who was human and the mother Thelin, or if it was the other way around. Also, Morgan being a witch and named Morgan makes me think of the witch Morgan Le Fay from the Legend of King Arthur. Number 18. Wait a minute, I was under the impression it was Morgan who'd sent the HK droids to Arcana, and that she must have known the star map would be strong enough to survive the droids self-destructing, because if it couldn't, wouldn't she have ordered the droids to not do that and risk vaporizing the map that she, really needs? Though I guess if she did know the map could survive an HK droid's self-destruction, she would have ordered them to do so immediately after arriving at the temple, and then afterwards just dig through the rubble to find the map. Morgan must have just got lucky then that Ahsoka managed to escape the explosion and save the map from being destroyed. Number 19, if you've never seen the Clone Wars and you're wondering what extensive database Hugh Yang is referring to here, well, I'll just let him explain it himself.
Inside my memory banks, I contain a record of every lightsaber ever made, and the Jedi who fashioned them.
Number 20, Ahsoka. Are you actually honestly surprised Sabine snuck off of your ship taking the star map and temple scan with her? You attempted to train her to be a Jedi, so you should know what she's like. Hell, she even admitted she never makes things easy for you like 5 minutes ago. Number 21. Shin, who do you think you are? Darth Maul. Number 22. In my opinion, Sabine solved this star map puzzle way too easily, and I'm sorry people who are just listening to the audio of this video, because the only way I'm going to be able to explain my reasoning about why I think this is visually. Sabine finds the Trinity symbol and then rotates these 3 circles, and only these 3, to match up the right symbols and unlock the star map. Does that mean this circle, and this circle can't be rotated? Because if they can rotate, then the Trinity symbol might not be in the correct position to line up correctly with the other symbols required to unlock the star map. If they can rotate, then it was incredibly lucky the Trinity symbol was in the correct position to line up with the correct symbols. And if they can't, then this essentially is the world's most easily solvable Rubik's Cube. It shouldn't have taken Sabine this long to solve. She should have solved it by accident long before noticing the Trinity symbol. Number 23. Excuse me, Sabine, but are you a goddamn Terminator? Or are your bones coated in adamantium or something? How are you punching, kicking, and elbowing droids made of metal without breaking your bones? I mean, the most famous clone trooper in all of Star Wars history is the one that punches a battle droid, screams in pain after doing so, then gets shot. Also, here's Cut not punching a commando droid and hurting his hand, and why not throw Obi-Wan hurting himself kicking Grievous's leg in as well for good measure? We'll just ignore Cody kicking a battle droid, Razor punching a commando droid to save Stack, this clone punching Grievous in the face, and this clone beating down a battle droid like he's trying to get added into a Mortal Kombat game. Number 24, why didn't this HK droid just shoot Sabine right here? Or here? It almost makes me think they've been ordered not to kill, especially what Baylan says at the end of episode 2. But if that were the case, the droids would be shooting to stun, not kill. Number 25, why does Sabine shooting the droid's foot make it let go of her? I assume it hasn't been programmed to feel pain, so why would it react at losing its foot by releasing her? Number 26, I think this was a pretty decent lightsaber duel. I especially liked how Shin used her cape, kind of like how Batman does in the Arkham Gaze to disorientate Sabine. I can, however, already hear all the usual complaints of the spinning around is completely unnecessary and they telegraph their attacks too much, etc, etc, etc. These complaints usually come from people who don't like the idea of the rule of cool, i.e. boring people, so their whining can just be ignored. Number 27, and here's another thing that's got a lot of people throwing a tantrum, Sabine getting stabbed. Here's the thing though, back when Reva got stabbed by Vader and then appeared in the next episode walking around, that was a valid criticism because Vader's lightsaber should have gone right through Reva's spine, paralysing her. Here, however, Shin stabs Sabine off-center in the kidney region, completely missing Sabine's spine. Though even if Sabine's spine was severed, it wouldn't have taken long at all for AHSOKA to get to a hospital and throw it into a tank of Bacta, the near-miraculous one-size-fits-all healing goo. So yeah, Sabine had a much higher chance of surviving this stabbing than both Qui-Gon and Reva, and her recovery is a heck of a lot more believable than Reva's. Number 28, before the credits we get the message for our friend Rey, which refers to Ray Stevenson, voice of Gar Saxon in the Clone Wars and Rebels, and Balon Skull actor, who passed away in May 2023. Rest in peace, Ray. Number 29, and now on to episode 2. And yeah, the reason there isn't long left in the video is because I couldn't actually find a massive amount of stuff to talk about from episode 2. It's a good episode, just more slower paced than episode 1. Anyways, let's get back on track. Baylan being the one to discover that the reflex point is on the planet Cetos implies Morgan knew about the map, knew where it was stored, but didn't actually know how to open it, because if she did, then she would have already figured out where the reflex point is located. And then what also doesn't make sense in a later scene is how upon arriving on Cetos, she immediately recognizes the structure as being made by an ancient people from a distant galaxy, and how the star map will interact with it to produce the images that it does. Has she visited other structures made by these ancient extragalactic people on other planets before? Seen them activated using other star maps maybe? This might also conflict with the point that Morgan's factories on Corellia have been refurbishing hyperdrive cores from Super Star Destroyers to be used in the Eye of Sion for what appears to be quite some time. But how could Morgan know she would need a ship with multiple hyperdrive cores to travel to a different galaxy if she didn't know Thrawn was in a different galaxy to begin with? I guess it could be that her sensing Thrawn calling out to her across time and space allowed her to figure out he was in a different galaxy? Or it could just be that Morgan did figure out how to open the star map, but for some reason she couldn't figure out where the reflex point was, despite the map pointing directly to it. Number 30, did anyone else spot the Purgle flying above Cetos? It's very blink and you miss it. You could be forgiven for thinking the Purgle song is just part of the music, but Baylan visibly reacts to it and looks up at it. And if you don't know what Purgle are, they're essentially space whales that can travel through hyperspace. This is how Thrawn and Ezra managed to end up in a distant galaxy. The pair were aboard Thrawn's flagship the Chimera when Ezra used the Force to get 3 Purgle Ultras to grab hold of the ship and jump into hyperspace. Purgle being able to travel through hyperspace is also how Grogu spotted a pod of them in the first episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. Number 31, whoever's controlling the guns on Transport CT-05 either is or must have been a stormtrooper because their aim is absolutely rubbish. Number 32, did anyone else think Marek was going to pull a Rebels and Helisaber away from AHSOKA when he started spinning his blade? I really wanted him to, just so I could point and laugh at all the Star Wars critics violently losing their tiny minds over it. Number 33, I've seen debates on whether this scene at the Spectres mural is meant to be the same one from the end of Rebels, only retconned to be slightly different, or if it's just meant to be a callback. The scene at the end of Rebels has Sabine touch Ezra's face on the mural, and then AHSOKA the White shows up and the two head out. This scene shows Sabine touching Ezra's face on the mural in an almost identical fashion, but then AHSOKA isn't all dressed up in white, and Hu Yang is also present. So it does seem it is meant to be the same scene just with some slight differences. However, the reference book Star Wars Timelines places the Rebels scene as occurring in 5 ABY, whereas we know AHSOKA takes place around 9 ABY, as Sabine actress Natasha Liu Bordizzo revealed it runs along the same timeline as The Mandalorian Season 3, which takes place in 9 ABY, as stated in the Star Wars timelines. To round all this off, my most disliked part of Episode 1 goes to Sabine being able to punch and kick droids without injuring herself. And my most disliked part of episode 2 goes to Marok not heli-sabering to escape AHSOKA. And my most liked part of episode 1 goes to Sabine's speeder bike stunt, and my most liked part of episode 2 goes to a character I haven't even mentioned yet, and that's Chopper, who's still bringing the same old Chopper hijinks we all know and love. Number 1, and right off the bat, I want to talk about something interesting I learned between making my previous video and this one, and that's the meaning behind Balin and Shin's surnames. In Norse mythology, Skoll and Hati are the sons of the wolf Fenrir, who in turn is the son of Loki and Angrboda, and at the time of Ragnarok will kill Odin, but then in turn be killed by Odin's son Vidar. Also, during Ragnarok, the wolf Skoll, who has always chased the sun, and the wolf Hati, who has always chased the moon, will finally catch up to the celestial bodies and devour them. And the meaning of Skoll's name in Old Norse is treachery or mockery, and the meaning of Hati is he who hates or enemy. Number 2, seeing Hu Yang like this, was anyone else kinda reminded of the Holodroid proxy from the Force Unleashed series? Number 3, do I really have to say it? We all know what this is a reference to, unless somehow you're watching Ahsoka having never seen A New Hope before, which would be a little weird. Sabine never manages to use the Force to block any of Ahsoka's hits, whereas Luke was able to block several shots from the training droid. But that doesn't make sense. Luke's a man and Sabine's a woman. I thought the narrative being pushed these days, according to some people, was that women are better than men at everything. Could it be perhaps that these people were talking out of their asses? Seriously though, what actually doesn't make sense is, how is this the first time Ahsoka has gotten Sabine to do this? Did Ahsoka only train Sabine in lightsaber combat after the end of Rebels? Number 4, while it is always a pleasure to see Mon Mothma, it would have been cool to get a Leia cameo here, either recast or via CGI with a hologram effect covering up the Uncanny Valley feel a bit. Number 5, oh, you gotta love seeing Hera laying the smackdown on Senator Xiono here. If you don't know who this guy is, then you've probably never seen the Resistance animated TV show, which is very likely since it only got 2 seasons and not that great reviews. Hamato Xiono appears twice in Resistance via hologram, once when you can't see him properly due to the transmission being encrypted in the first episode of the first season, and the second time when you can actually see him in the second episode of the second season. He does look a fair bit different in Resistance compared to in Ahsoka, though there is a gap of around 25 years between these two appearances, which could explain that. He is the father of the main character of Resistance, Kazuda Xiono, and wasn't very happy to hear about his son joining the Resistance, as he viewed them all as a bunch of extremists. And even with Starkiller Base having destroyed Hosnian Prime, the Xiono family's homeworld, he still refused to join or raid the Resistance despite his son urging him to, because the First Order had discovered Kazuda was a Resistance spy, and that placed the entire Xiono family in danger. Number 6, we get our first appearance of live-action Jason Syndulla, who we only saw briefly in animated form at the end of the final episode of Rebels, and it's got me thinking about the genetics of human Twi'lek hybrids. He still possesses the same green hair colour from when he was a toddler, but his eyebrows appear less green, and his eye colour has changed from bright blue to what appears to now be a dark brown. And this colour changing of features reminds me of the 2 other human Twi'lek hybrids we have seen before, Shea and Jekla Quain. Children of Sulu Quain and an unknown human, when we first see them in The Deserter, the 10th episode of Season 2 of the Clone Wars, Shea's skin is primarily lightish blue in colour but with patches of tan, and Jek appears to be entirely tan. Later, however, in Cut and Run, the 2nd episode of the first season of The Bad Batch, Shea's skin colour has changed significantly to a darker blue, and the patches have moved and shifted from tan to a dark grey. Jek hasn't changed as much, as he is still predominantly tan in colour, but elements of pink have started to appear on his face and Laku. This suggests the colour of the skin and features of human Twi'lek hybrids can change as they age, which would explain Jason no longer having green eyebrows and blue eyes. We interrupt this Triple S Variety Channel video to bring you this important message. Have you remembered to carry out the 3 S's? S number 1, subscribe to the Triple S Variety Channel. S number 2, smash that like button. And S number 3, share this video with friends, family, and relevant communities. We now return you to your Triple S Variety Channel video already in progress. Number 7, I love this discussion between Sabine and Ahsoka about the Force and how, even though it resides in all living things, not everyone is able to use it. Ahsoka explains that talent is a factor, defined as someone having a natural aptitude or skill, which explains how Anakin was able to survive whilst pod racing, how baby Ahsoka was able to tame the Sabertooth, how Luke was able to block the shots from the training droid, sense when he needed to fire to destroy the Death Star, call his lightsaber, force jump, use force choke, etc., how Grogu was able to lift the Mudhorn, heal Grief Karga and reflect fire, how Rey was able to mind trick Stormtrooper 007, call the lightsaber, lift rocks, heal the Vexis and Ben, etc. Even in Legends, a guy called Dessel had natural talent for the Force, unknowingly using it to crush his abusive father's heart, win at Sabak, sense danger, and aid him when he became a soldier in the Brotherhood of Darkness. Oh, yeah, I should probably mention Dessel ended up becoming known as Darth Bane. You know, one of the most important and powerful Dark Lords of the Sith in history, the prophesized Sithari, aka the Sith's version of the Chosen One, the one who came up with the rule of two for Criff's sake. They all had the natural talent to use the Force to heighten their reflexes and perform actions instinctively without actually knowing that they were tapping into the Force when doing these things. AHSOKA then also says that natural talent can only take a Force user so far. Training and focus is essential to properly mastering the Force. So for the people who already had such significant natural talent in the Force like Anakin, AHSOKA, Luke, Rey, and Bane, this added training is what made them the most powerful known Force users in the galaxy, and the same will probably happen for Grogu as well if he decides to ever start training again. Number 8. A long line of non-traditional Jedi, I'll say. Sabine being trained by Ahsoka, who was expelled from the Jedi Order by the Council due to their belief that she had bombed the Jedi Temple and committed several murders. However, it turned out she had been framed, so they offered her the chance to rejoin the Order, but she refused. Ahsoka trained by Anakin. I mean, we all know what happened to him, no need to go over it. Anakin trained by Obi-Wan, who fell in love with Duchess Satine Kryze of Mandalore and would have left the Jedi Order for her if she'd asked him to. Obi-Wan trained by Qui-Gon, who defied the Jedi Council multiple times when he chose to follow the spirit of the Jedi Code rather than its strict structures and rules. And Qui-Gon trained by Dooku, who grew to dislike the Republic due to its corruption, left the Jedi Order on good terms so as to become the Count of his home planet Sereno, became Darth Sidious's apprentice, formed the Confederacy of Independent Systems, etc, etc, etc. Number 9, I like how Ahsoka stops trying to force Sabine to work around how she's flying the ship and instead switches to working with Sabine so that they can shoot down the attacking fighters as a team. A really nice character moment for Ahsoka here. Number 10, so Ahsoka's ship has no forward-facing guns, only a tail gun? Seriously? Number 11.
Whoa, I got one! Great, kid! Don't get cocky!
Number 12.
2 more down! Great, kid! Don't get penisy!
Number 13, Hu Yang surmises that the Eye of Sign is apparently a hyperspace ring, a device that gives fighters with no onboard hyperdrive the ability to jump into hyperspace. I wouldn't have thought the Eye of Sign was a hyperspace ring since it is in and of itself already a ship. It has a bridge, you know, but if it indeed is one, then what ship is it going to attach to? Is it intended to attach to Thrawn's flagship, the Chimera, and bring it back from the distant galaxy? Number 14, Marok speaks, and he either has a naturally deep voice, his voice is being altered by his helmet like Vader or Kylo Ren, or he's a robot/cyborg. In any case, there's been a lot of speculation as to the identity of Marok, with some even believing it's actually Ezra, who's either been brainwashed or has amnesia. Why not leave a comment below with your theory as to who Marok is? Number 15. Ooh, do I sense a bit of animosity between Shin and Morgan, perhaps laying the foundation for a future conflict between the two? Number 16. Okay, I know this is supposed to be a World War II dogfight analogy, but them having to keep making strafing runs doesn't really make sense since we've previously seen fighters stop moving and then float in place, so why couldn't the bad guys do this and just shoot the heck out of Ahsoka, Sabine and Hu Yang? Number 17, also, either these space fighters have very weak lasers or the hull of Ahsoka's ship is very tough. So tough as to survive multiple laser blasts. Number 18, if Shin and Marok's fighters had cameras on their undersides, which they could use to see directly below them rather than having to rely on looking at their cockpits, they probably would have actually spotted Ahsoka's ship when they flew directly over it. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to not getting a cameo, not even a mention, of Leia when Hera talks with Mon Mothma and the senators. And my most liked part of the episode goes to the discussion about the Force between Sabine and Ahsoka. It felt like a slap to the face of all the Star Wars critics who whined and cried about Rey being able to use the Force without any training. Number 1, and right off the bat, I know most people probably already know this, but just in case you don't, dear viewer, Ahsoka calling Thrawn the heir to the Empire is a reference to the first book in the Legends Thrawn trilogy novel series. The trilogy that covers Thrawn rallying as many Imperial forces as possible in an attempt to destroy the New Republic. Spoiler alert, he doesn't succeed. Number 2, I mean, we already knew Hu Yang had some moves when he got his head and arms shot off in the Clone Wars Season 5 episode Citizen a Test of Strength, and went all Sanji on one of Hondo's pirate crew, so it's cool to also see him throw some punches here in this droid v droid brawl. Number 3.
May I make one request of you both? Stay together. You always did better that way.
This is foreshadowing.
Number 4. Ah yes, let me just bring my son along as we fly into a potentially incredibly dangerous situation. I'd rather him die alongside me than become an orphan. Number 5, I wonder why from this point on Ahsoka decides to not use her Shoto lightsaber for the rest of the episode. Bit weird. Number 6, well, I guess Marok wasn't Ezra, but then who, and more importantly, what the hell was he? What was with the greenish black smoke that erupted out of him? Could it be related to Night Sister magic? Similar to how when Darth Sidious killed Savage Opress in the Clone Wars at Season 5 Episode 16 The Lawless, and Mother Talzin's magic left left his body, causing him to lose his monstrous form and shrink back to his original size. And also, as the smoke escapes, the body of Marok deflates, similar to the mask of the unnamed Inquisitor Ahsoka killed in Tales of the Jedi Season 1 Episode 6 Resolve. Could these two be related somehow? Or could he be Johann Kraus from Hellboy 2 The Golden Army? I mean, why not? Makes as much sense as it secretly being Ezra with amnesia. Number 7.
Stay together.
Foreshadowing.
Number 8. Alright, now I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on and explain an insane, conspiracy level theory I've cooked up whilst on Spice. In the Thrawn trilogy, we meet the character Joruus C'baoth, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Or rather, we meet his clone Joruus C'baoth, with 2 U's in Joruus, who was created by Palpatine. He wasn't a Sith, but rather a Dark Jedi, also known as a Fallen Jedi, which is the title of this episode. My insane theory is that Baylan Skoll is himself a clone. He is the Fallen Jedi that the title of the episode refers to, as he is a Dark Jedi, and one of the Old Norse meanings behind his surname Skoll is mockery, which adds to my belief that he is a clone. But who is he a clone of? Who is he a mockery of? He could be a clone of a canon version of Joruus, who in Legends came up with the Outbound Flight project, an expedition to find potential life outside of the known galaxy. Sidious wanted this expedition destroyed and sent Kim and Doriana to accomplish this. Whilst his task force waited to ambush Outbound Flight, Thrawn arrived, decimated most of the task force, and captured Doriana. Doriana convinced Thrawn that the Jedi weren't that great by introducing him to Sidious, and Thrawn agreed to destroy Outbound Flight for the Sith Lord. Pulling Outbound Flight out of slip space, Thrawn ordered them to return to Republic space, and when they didn't, he attacked. This ended up turning Joruus to the dark side, and he started to force choke Thrawn whilst they were talking to each other through a visual transmission. Joruus failed to kill Thrawn, however, as Outbound Flight was destroyed before he could finish choking Thrawn to death. So that is one possibility, but I have another, and this is probably where I'm going to lose some people here. I believe he might actually be some form of clone of Anakin Skywalker. Now, why the heck do I think that? Well, Baylan seems to have some sort of connection or obsession with Ahsoka. At the end of episode 2, he says it would be a shame to kill Ahsoka as there are so few Jedi left, to which Morgan asks if he's feeling sentimental, and he answers it's just the truth. What if he says it would be a shame to kill Ahsoka because he has Anakin's memories of her, and it isn't the Jedi Morgan asks him if he's feeling sentimental about, but instead Ahsoka? This would also imply Morgan knows Baylan is a clone of Anakin. And at the start of this episode, Baylan advises Morgan that they should get going ASAP, to which she asks if she can hear fear in his voice, and he answers that it's just experience. Could it be the experience of knowing Ahsoka? Knowing that she's perfectly capable of stopping them because he has the memories of Anakin training her and their missions together where he saw her accomplish almost impossible tasks. And upon meeting Ahsoka, Baylan tells her Anakin spoke highly of her, to which she counters that Anakin never mentioned Baylan. If Baylan is a clone of Anakin, that would explain why Anakin never mentioned him to Ahsoka and how Baylan knows Anakin spoke highly of her. He has Anakin's memories of speaking highly about Ahsoka to others. Finally, Baylan asking if what Anakin became is the reason Ahsoka abandoned him doesn't really make sense unless he's either referring to Ahsoka refusing to rejoin the Jedi Order after she had been expelled under the belief she had bombed the Jedi Temple and committed several murders, or when she disappeared during her duel with him in Rebels Season 4 Episode 13, A World Between Worlds, when Ezra saved her by pulling her into the World Between Worlds, leaving Vader to fall and then limp out the Sith Temple on Malachor. And for what it's worth, that episode even included a brief moment of Ahsoka walking away. Also, a small point, Baylan in episode 1 saying to Morgan that if Ahsoka has the star map, then she's lucky, reminds me of Ahsoka's last conversation she has with Anakin in the Clone Wars Season 7 Episode 9, All Friends Not Forgotten, before he turns into Darth Vader, where he says with any luck the war will be over soon. She says Obi-Wan doesn't believe in luck, and Anakin answers then he's glad he taught her otherwise. If this somehow ends up being the case, which I highly doubt, that would be incredibly insane, that he is in fact some way a clone of Anakin, that would just be nuts. I wonder how this will affect Ahsoka when she learns of it. However, the biggest kill shot to this theory, despite how obviously wacky it is in and of itself, is that by 9 ABY, only Gideon had been able to potentially create clones that possessed the Force. And yes, though Sidious and the Sith Eternal were also creating clones and made Snoke, who was naturally connected to the Force, 3 years later in 12 ABY, I highly doubt that Baylan came from Exegol, since if Sidious redeemed Snoke's body as unworthy for his spirit to inhabit, what reason would he have had to also not possess Baylan's body? The dude is perfect. A failed kill shot I've heard against my very out there theory is that Hu Yang recognises the lightsaber as being Baylan Skoll's, so that confirms Baylan isn't a clone. I call this a failed kill shot because who's to say this clone didn't take Baylan's lightsaber and name for his own? And in before people say I'm 100% wrong and that Fallen Jedi refers to someone else, let me just say you believing it refers to someone else is just as much a theory as me saying it refers to Baylan who is a clone. A more believable theory granted, but still just a theory nonetheless. Just as I cannot prove my theory is correct, neither can you prove yours is correct. There is no official statement about who Fallen Jedi refers to and why, so no one can claim their interpretation is the correct one, and you can't claim mine is the incorrect one. Number 9, I guess despite saying to Sabine earlier that if they can't travel to the distant galaxy, then no one should be able to, AHSOKA must have changed her mind since she tried to snatch and escape with the star map rather than immediately destroy it. But then later she apparently changes her mind again and tells Sabine to destroy it, so I've got no idea what she actually wants to do with it. Number 10, couldn't AHSOKA have destroyed the machinery and equipment connected to the star map pedestal to stop the Eye of Sion from plotting the jump to the distant galaxy, rather than just focusing on removing the star map? Number 11, judging from what Baylan says to Sabine about her family dying on Mandalore, Clan Ren perished during the Great Purge of Mandalore and AHSOKA was somehow involved. What I believe happened was whilst Sabine was training with AHSOKA, she heard about the Purge and wanted to go and save her family, but AHSOKA stopped her from leaving. AHSOKA most likely believed it would have been a chop suey mission for Sabine, whereas Sabine viewed it as AHSOKA not trusting her to be able to do it, that she wasn't strong enough. This could also be the reason why AHSOKA and Sabine went their separate ways. Number 12, Baylan tells Sabine that he wishes to travel to the distant galaxy for the greater good. But what does he mean by this? What does the greater good mean to Baylan? The return of the Empire? The rule of Thrawn? Is the greater good related to what he said back in episode 2 when he tells Shin that the return of Thrawn will mean a new beginning for others, but for them will mean power that they never dreamt of before? Number 13.
I've got a bad feeling.
Finish the quote, Jason. Finish it! Number 14. So somehow, don't ask me how, AHSOKA has ended up inside the World Between Worlds, which was first properly seen in Rebels Season 4 Episode 13, and somehow, don't ask me how, Anakin freaking Skywalker appears out of nowhere. He is most likely some form of Force Ghost, it's just he doesn't have that blue Force Ghost effect all over him, which could be due to him appearing inside the World Between Worlds. Number 15. Anakin saying he didn't expect to see AHSOKA so soon implies he has either been waiting for her in the World Between Worlds, or that he thought he would see her again when she died and becomes one with the Force just like he did. Number 16. So they didn't de-age Hayden Christensen when he appeared in the Obi-Wan TV show, but they decided to de-age him here despite Anakin's appearance here being from when he was a Jedi Knight, and so should actually look older than in the Obi-Wan flashback where he was a Padawan. Number 17. Yeah, not a fan of the creepy music that plays after it cuts to black when the episode ends. Bad vibes, man. Bad vibes. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to Hera being an irresponsible parent and bringing her son along on a potentially dangerous mission. And my most liked part of the episode goes to all the lightsaber duels and seeing the various stances used by all the sword-wielding characters. Really cool. Number 1, and right off the bat,
one is never too old to learn, Snips.
I think the Jedi Council would disagree with you there, Anakin. Number 2.
I won't fight you.
I've heard that before.
I will not fight you, Father.
Number 3, so now we get a mention of Leia rather than back in episode 3 during Hera's meeting with Chancellor Mothma and a bunch of senators. Number 4, I'm so glad Hera actually listened to Jason trying to tell her something, because I hate the trope of adults refusing to listen to kids who have something helpful or important to say. Number 5, okay, these flashback vision sequences kick ass so hard, and instead of me doing separate points for everything I unashamedly fanboyed over when I first watched this episode, I'll just list them all here now. Phase 1 Clone Trooper armor, and I mean actual IRL armor, not just CGI like in Attack of the Clones. Anakin and AHSOKA's Clone War outfits, though I noticed they gave AHSOKA a significantly less revealing outfit than what she had in early Clone Wars, which is a good call in my opinion. Mandalorian Super Commandos, I bet a lot of people who haven't seen the Clone Wars are confused why these Mandalorians look like Maul. And Commander Rex voiced by Tamara Morrison and the 332nd Company wearing the helmets they painted to resemble AHSOKA's facial markings. So cool! Number 6, young AHSOKA here is played by Ariana Greenblatt, who you might recognise as having previously played young Gamora in Avengers Infinity War and Sasha in the Barbie movie.
Fascist?
I think she does a really good job playing AHSOKA here, and seeing her act alongside Hayden Christensen now makes me want a live-action Sky Guy and Snips miniseries. Number 7, with all these Twi'leks around, I can only assume this flashback vision takes place on Ryloth, which would make sense with AHSOKA saying this was one of their first missions, as it was as seen in the Clone Wars Season 1, 3 parts of episodes 19, 20 and 21, where the Republic helps liberate Ryloth. And it doubly makes sense since in episode 19, Storm over Ryloth, AHSOKA voices the same feelings over losing so many of the men under her command. end. Although in the Clone Wars Ahsoka lost clones during a space battle rather than a ground assault, current day Ahsoka is probably just remembering back to what she felt at that time and applying it here. Number 8, I was really hoping with Anakin mentioning separatist droids we'd get to see them slice up some clankers. Alas, we do not. Number 9, is it just a trick of the lightsaber light, or does anyone else think Ahsoka's eyes actually turned all Sith here for a moment? Number 10, and Ahsoka has learned her lesson, just like Luke learned his in Return of the Jedi when he chose not to kill his father. Unironically, and I know some people might roll their eyes or get mad at me for saying this, both Luke and Ahsoka have chosen to not fight what they hate, but save what they love. Luke chose to love and save his friends and father rather than hate and fight him and Sidious. Ahsoka here chooses to love and save her friends and herself rather than hate and fight Thrawn and who she is. This was both their final lessons into becoming Jedi, going beyond the teachings of their masters. Both Obi-Wan and Yoda trained Luke to face Darth Vader and the Emperor. With Anakin having turned to the dark side, they now believed it was Luke who was the chosen one, the one who would bring balance to the Force by destroying the Sith. If he had done what they had trained him to do, he would have fallen just like his father before him. Ahsoka was trained by Anakin in a time of war. She was taught how to be a soldier, to end conflict with her lightsabers rather than with words more often than not. She had never been a Jedi since all the Jedi, due to the Clone Wars, had ceased being Jedi and become soldiers, generals, peacemakers through aggression rather than peacekeepers through diplomacy. This is why Ahsoka comes back as Ahsoka the White. She has a new purity of will and direction. She no longer views her task as stopping Thrawn no matter the cost, even if it means sacrificing the chance to rescue Ezra, but rather it's now to save Ezra and Sabine. To save Sabine from falling to the dark side by no longer putting her duty to stop Thrawn above the feelings Sabine has for Ezra. To not repeat the mistakes of the Jedi Council, who put their duty of adhering to the Jedi Code above the feelings of Anakin, and just as Sidious manipulated those feelings Anakin had to turn into the dark side, so too has Baylan manipulated Sabine's feelings for Ezra to get her to willingly join them in going to the distant galaxy. Ahsoka has learnt that though she is everything that Anakin was, as he had taught her all she knows, she needed to stop focusing on the monster he became, but rather on the man he was. He was someone who loved and was loved, who believed in what was right and just. Yes, he had darkness in him, but everyone does, and it's what you choose to do that will decide whether that darkness will take over or not. Under the misguidance and manipulation of the Jedi Council and Sidious, Anakin tragically fell, but from that fall came first his son, and now his Padawan to face the darkness and remain in the light. Number 11, so it would appear that all the people freaking out that Ahsoka would use the Will Between Worlds to teleport to the distant galaxy, or time travel to undo Baylan destroying the star map, or, hilariously, create a multiverse so that the sequel trilogy would be erased, we're freaking out for nothing. Number 12, did anyone else find it a little weird to see Ahsoka not wearing a form of headband? Like, seeing no clear divide between the orange and white of her skin is odd to see. Number 13, speaking of her headbands, this new one she now wears is very reminiscent of the one she wore during the Siege of Mandalore and Order 66, with like a gap at the front that looks like something could be slotted into it. Number 14, I love that instead of the Purgle Ultra like grabbing hold of Ahsoka's ship to take it on its jump, the episode goes all Finding Nemo with them hitching a ride inside its mouth. Number 15, I wonder if we'll see much more of Hera, Jason and Chopper this season. Seeing Jason tapping into the Force this episode has got me wondering why Ahsoka has been training Sabine instead of him. Is it because she finds it easy to train a warrior to be a warrior since she herself was trained to be a soldier? Or does Hera have reservations about Jason becoming a Jedi, which she knows he wants to be, because of memories she has of his dad, Kanan? To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to not seeing some battle droids during the Clone Wars flashback visions. And my most liked part of the episode goes to the Clone Wars flashback visions, seeing Anakin, young Ahsoka, and all the details listed from animation and put into live action. Number 1, and right off the bat, Ahsoka saying the best of the 3-part History of the Galaxy stories is the first part has got me thinking, is this Dave Filoni subtly including what his favourite Star Wars movie is? And if it is, does first part mean the first movie released, A New Hope, or does it mean the first movie chronologically, A Phantom Menace? Or does it not refer to individual movies but rather the trilogies, which again begs the question, does it mean the first trilogy released, the original trilogy, or the first trilogy chronologically, the prequel trilogy? Number 2, oh come on Ahsoka, don't ruin my previous video by disproving what I said about you learning your lesson to put saving your friends over destroying your enemies. Like, I'm really surprised she seems to be trying to adhere to the whole train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose thing, and that Sabine choosing not to lose Ezra forever is unequivocally the wrong choice. Number 3.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
I have a bad feeling that a certain group of people aren't going to like the inclusion of this phrase into the actual universe of Star Wars. Like when people didn't like that a more heroic sounding version of the Imperial March was played in an Empire recruitment ad in the Solo movie. Number 4, Okay, so we get a lot of information thrown at us in this short scene, so let's go through it all piece by piece. Peridia isn't the name of the distant galaxy, but is instead the name of this one particular planet. And it turns out to be the original homeworld of the Dathomiri, which explains why a star map leading to here was kept locked up inside a Night Sister temple on Arcana. It was the Dathomiri who were the first to ever ride the Purrgil, which allowed them to leave their home galaxy and travel to the Star Wars galaxy and settle on Dathomir, where they continue this habit of riding giant beasts by doing the same to the native Rancors. Side note, is Dathomiri their original name, and so they named the planet they colonised in the Star Wars galaxy Dathomir after themselves, or was the planet they colonised already called Dathomir and they changed their name to match it? This also implies the original Dathomiri were in no way originally related to the Zabrak species, whose homeworld was Iridonia but also set up a colony on Dathomir, making them two separate species that interbred rather than a single Zabrak species with two subspecies. This explains why the men and women of Dathomir, such as Maul and Asajj Ventress, look so much different from the men and women of Iridonia, such as Eeth, Koth and Sugi. Ventress and Maul are the result of interbreeding between Dathomiri women and Zabrak men, whereas Sugi and Koth are pure-blood Zabraks. This is very similar to the legend's origin of the Dathomirians, who were the result of interbreeding between human women and Zabrak men. In fact, in Legends, Maul and his brothers were the offspring of a human woman named Kaisina and unnamed Zabrak men. And I say men because I don't think they were triplets, and according to Dathomirian tradition, the father is sacrificed shortly after conception. Peridia is also the place where Purrgil go to die, the ring of the planet being made up of countless Purrgil bones. This is similar to the legend of the elephant's graveyard, a location where old elephants instinctively go when they reach a certain age to die. The idea of the ring of a planet being a graveyard also reminds me of the second episode of season 7 of Red Dwarf, Stoke Me a Clipper. In it, we see that the final resting place of all the Arnold Rimmers across countless dimensions who took up the mantle of Ace Rimmer is the Ring of a Planet, a ring made up entirely of the small light bead containing coffin devices. Number 5, what is Balin actually looking for that will bring an end to the repetition of rise, fall, rise, fall? To me, it sounds like something similar to the Flood from Halo, a parasitic organism that infects and consumes everything, bringing it all under its complete control, so that there is no more war, no more rebellion, no more rise and fall, but eternal power over every single living thing in the galaxy. Number 6, I love the Kintsugi looking design of Thrawn's Night Troopers. Yep, that's apparently what they're called, which raises the question of if they are somehow also connected to the Night Sisters, because they have a similar design with the red straps around their armour, which looks similar to the Night Sisters' red straps around like their legs and torsos and such from what we see in Clone Wars. Also, if you don't know what Kintsugi is, it is the Japanese art of putting broken pottery pieces back together with gold, built on the idea that embracing flaws and imperfections, you can create an even stronger, more beautiful piece of art, which makes sense since the character of Thrawn is all about artwork. I especially love the design of Enoch with his ancient Romanesque mask and helmets. If you've played Halo Master Chief Collection, you've probably seen some helmets that look similar. Plus, it also reminds me of the Lord Marshal from the Chronicles of Riddick. Interestingly, when I decided to search the word Enoch on Wikipedia, I discovered he is a biblical figure, and in the 3 books attributed to him, he was taken up to heaven and was appointed guardian of all the celestial treasures, chief of the archangels, and the immediate attendant on the throne of God. He was subsequently taught all the secrets and mysteries, and with all the angels at his back, fulfills of his own accord whatever comes out of the mouth of God, executing his decrees. This fits if you correlate heaven to Peridia, Thrawn to God, the Night Troopers to angels, and that he is tasked with overseeing the celestial treasures, i.e. the Night Sisters' cargo. Number 7, with Thrawn mentioning that since being stuck in the distant galaxy, because I don't buy they're stuck on Peridia specifically because they have a ship that can fly through space, their numbers have dwindled. That must mean they've been fighting someone or something. Now, it could be the nomads on Peridia they've been fighting, but I've seen people also speculate it could be whatever it is that's been calling to Balin, and Thrawn and the Great Mothers want to get away from it ASAP. Which doesn't make complete sense to me, because if Thrawn and the Great Mothers wanted to head out ASAP, why wasn't all of the Great Mother's cargo preloaded onto the Chimera, since that whole process alone is going to take 3 whole rotations? And another thing, why are the Great Mothers even here? They seem to be alone, so are they thousands, maybe millions of years old, and stay behind on Peridia whilst the rest of the ancient Dathomiri hitched a ride to the Star Wars galaxy on a bunch of Purrgil? Which then begs the question, why haven't these Great Mothers also hitched a ride on a passing Purrgil to go to the Star Wars galaxy if they want to get away from whatever's calling to Balin so much? Are they unable to for some reason? So many questions. Number 8, I love this back and forth between Sabine and the Howler, especially when she points for it to go back and it does, only for it to start following her again when she continues walking. That part actually made me laugh out loud. Number 9, the term Boken Jedi is new, but the word Boken itself is not. The wooden training saws previously seen in this show, Rebels and the Clone Wars are known as Boken sabers. So in essence, Balin referring to Ezra as a Boken Jedi is him calling Ezra a fake or lesser Jedi, just as the Boken saber is a fake or lesser lightsaber. Number 10, I'm so glad Ezra's grown his hair out again. I really didn't like how they made him look like a Ken doll back in Rebels. Number 11, I guess rather than might makes right, it's height makes right, since Ezra's for some reason given the no-T orders, and I can only assume it's because he's bigger than them. Number 12, Thrawn says to Morgan he wants to know Ahsoka's master, but the thing is, he already does. In the novel Thrawn Alliances, in 19 BBY, Padme, whilst talking to Thrawn, mentions Anakin's former Padawan and even says her name, Ahsoka. It would be unlikely for Thrawn to forget such a detail considering he interacted with both Anakin in 19 BBY and Darth Vader in 2 BBY, so presumably he would have done his background research, especially since he knows Anakin and Darth Vader are one and the same. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to Ahsoka messing with my conclusions in my previous video of her choosing to no longer fight what she hates but save what she loves, by in this episode not liking that Sabine did just that. And my most liked part of the episode goes to the interaction between Sabine and the Howler that literally made me laugh out loud. Point number 1, I loved the smile Mon Mothma had after Hera said it wasn't direct orders she was ignoring but Xiono himself. No one likes you, Xiono. Point number 2, Xiono scoffing at the reports of Jedi, false Jedi, star maps, star whales and distant galaxies reminded me of Janos Slynt in Game of Thrones, who laughed disbelievingly when Jon mentioned Mance Rayder having giants with him. Ignorant morons, the pair of them. Point number 3, Xiono's clearly never heard the phrase absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, since he believes there is no Imperial remnant, as there is no proof, as he sees it, of its existence. My god, the blissful, willful ignorance this guy lives in is insane. Point number 4, Carson mentioning the conflict on Mandalore means we must now be past the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, at least with this and probably the past few episodes. Point number 5, well, if it isn't old Goldenrod himself. Having C-3PO relay a message from Leia is actually a pretty nifty way of not having to recast or CGI Leia to have her appear, and revealing Leia to be the leader of the Defense Council explains why she couldn't appear here in person, and also how she manages to create the resistance against the First Order later on. Point number 6, Chopper was so close to committing a few war crimes after hearing Xiono refer to C-3PO as a mere droid. Point number 7, I didn't actually expect to see Anakin again after his appearance in episode 5, so him coaching Ahsoka here as a hologram was a nice surprise, and having him name drop Grievous, Ventress and Dooku was also a nice touch. Point number 8, wow, Morgan got this minefield set up pretty quick. I'm glad we didn't actually see any of the Purrgil die from going through it. I was worried we might, and that would have been too sad. Point number 9, I said it before and I'll say it again, you really could do with putting some autocannons on your ship, Ahsoka, for situations just like this. Point number 10, come on Thrawn, you should have already known that Anakin was Ahsoka's master from the novel Thrawn Alliances, like I mentioned in my previous video. Maybe he somehow just didn't put 2 and 2 together when Padme mentioned Anakin's former Padawan and then also said the name Ahsoka. Maybe he thought they were 2 different people or something, I don't know. Point number 11, Thrawn must be getting so tired at this point of Morgan always questioning his orders and decisions. I wonder how much longer he's going to put up with her. Point number 12,
The Emperor died. That's what people say.
I mean, it does make sense some might doubt Sidious is actually dead since they only have Luke's word on that to go on, but then the counter to that would be, well, if he ain't dead, then where is he? Why hasn't he rallied and retaken control of what's left of the Empire? But of course, we the viewers know what happened to him and where he is now, just like how we know how he came back, unlike Poe, who could only say the very justified line of somehow Palpatine returns. That ain't bad writing, it's realistic. Point number 13, it's nice to finally get a mention of Zeb and to hear what he's been up to. Hopefully he gets to make an appearance, if not in the next episode, then possibly in season 2. Point number 14, I completely failed to realise in the last episode that Clotho of the Great Mothers is played by the great Claudia Black of Pitch Black, Farscape, Stargate and Uncharted fame. Amazing actress. And yes, the Great Mothers have names. The one played by Claudia Black is called Clotho, or Clothau, I'm not sure which. The one played by Gerald Prescott, who most will probably recognise having played Jackie in the first season of The Walking Dead, is called Actropor. And the one played by Jane Seymour, who before appearing in Ahsoka played the Borg Queen in Star Trek Picard, is called Lachesis, or Lakesis, I don't know. And all 3 are based on the Fates, a trio of goddesses called Clotho, Atropos and Lachesis in Greek mythology, who shaped the destiny of each human, often expressed in textile metaphors such as spinning fibres into yarn or weaving threads on a loom. Point number 15. Wow, okay, so Bale is essentially saying to Shin here that they aren't a team anymore. She's been mentioning the power Thrawn and his new empire could bring so much, it's gotten to the point that Balin's like, yeah, you go get that power that you obviously want, I'm gonna go do my own thing that doesn't involve you anymore. Bye. Point number 16. Ahsoka and Huyang fly right over Ezra and Sabine, and yet the pair on the ground don't notice Ahsoka's ship being chased and fired at by a bunch of fighters. All they had to do was look up a tiny bit. Point number 17. Oh, there's the good boy. I was wondering where Sabine's howler was. I'm glad she didn't abandon him. Point number 18. Okay, that effect of Ahsoka hitting the ground could have done with a bit more work. I actually thought she was going to jump out of the ship and use the Force to cushion her landing, actually. Point number 19. It's a good thing none of the shooty nomads went after Ezra. Very convenient. Point number 20. With Ezra refusing to use the lightsaber and saying the Force is his ally, I was hoping we get a bit more than just some bog standard Force pushes from him. It would have been cool to see him using Force enhanced punches and kicks to cave in Nomad and Night Trooper armor. Maybe not to the same level as Mace Windu in Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars series, but still just enough to show he's using the Force to enhance his strength. Point number 21. It's always cool to see someone use the Force to block a lightsaber, and the effect it has on Shin's here is similar to the effect it had on Rey and Kylo's in The Rise of Skywalker. I noticed, however, there was no such effect when Vader used the Force to block Reva's saber in Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I think rather than that being a lack of attention to detail, it instead actually showcased how effortless it was for Vader to block Reva's blade. Either that, or he's grabbing hold of the saber's hilt, the person's hand, or hell, maybe their entire body with the Force to stop them from swinging rather than blocking the blade itself. Point number 22. I really want to know who trained Balin, because they did an amazing job, since he can hold his own against Ahsoka even when she's using both her lightsabers. Dude's an absolute unit. Point number 23. I loved seeing the conflict on Balin's face, whether to go help his Padawan or continue doing his own thing, since he knows Shin won't be any match for Sabine, Ezra and Ahsoka combined. Point number 24. Hang on, Thrawn and Morgan are only now just realising that Shin is fighting Sabine and Ezra on her own when they can very clearly see there's only 3 hexes lit up with colour. Point number 25. Poor Shin, abandoned first by her master and now by Thrawn. It's not so great she rejected Ahsoka's help, and I'm worried what's going to happen to her if she finds and confronts Balin in the next episode. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to the not so great effect of Ahsoka hitting the ground after jumping out of her ship. A minor thing, but I still noticed it. And my most liked part of the episode goes to C-3PO laying the smackdown on Xiono. How dare he call the god of the Ewoks a mere droid. Point number 1. I've heard people wonder why Thrawn has the Eye of Sion brought to the Chimera rather than take the Chimera to the Eye of Sion, and my understanding was that the reason the Chimera is in atmosphere and this low to the ground is that it can't increase its elevation under its own power anymore due to the damage it suffered in the last episode of Rebels. Point number 2. Alright, I'm just going to say it here now to get it out of the way. Some of the decisions Thrawn makes throughout this episode, combined with what he said in the previous episode, makes absolutely no sense to me. At the end of the last episode, Thrawn saying,
Ahsoka Tano has lost the one thing she could not afford to lose today. Time.
Implied no matter what Ahsoka and the gang did now, it wouldn't matter. And yet, Thrawn in this episode still has to do things in order to delay them, and even then he only does the bare minimum. Like sending only 2 TIE fighters when he very clearly has many more he could send to swarm and overwhelm the good guys. And considering the blaster fire from TIE fighters actually does seem to do damage to Ahsoka's ship, unlike the Eye of Science fighters, a murder of TIEs would actually completely obliterate the good guys. Then rather than sending his alive but soon to be undead Night Troopers, Morgan and his already zombified Death Troopers against Ahsoka, Ezra and Sabine, all at once, he staggers them out as if he's intentionally trying to not overwhelm the good guys. I looked up this trope on TV Tropes and apparently it's called Mook Chivalry, and they mentioned the famous Nigel Powers quote from Austin Powers in Goldmember.
Oh, put the guns down. Is this the first day on the job or something? Look, this is how it goes. You attack me one at a time, and I knock you out with a single punch, okay? Go.
And also point out another aspect of Mook Chivalry later on in the video when we get to it in the episode. Point number 3, so the Great Mothers perform some sort of initiation ritual to make Morgan more like them, and I'm only just now wondering, why do the Great Mothers, and now Morgan, have
Lifeless eyes. Black eyes like a doll's eyes.
when we've never seen a Night Sister with eyes like that before? Not even Mother Talzin or old Daka had black eyes. Point number 4, Morgan receives the Blade of Talzin from the Great Mothers, a sword only ever seen in the 9th episode of the 6th season of the Clone Wars, The Disappeared Part 2. And I can only assume that it's through their magic that they knew of Talzin despite being in separate galaxies, and maybe even sensed her death at the lightning and lightsabers of Sidious, Dooku and Grievous. Unless they knew her personally and Talzin used to live on Peridia before heading to the Star Wars galaxy, who knows? Point number 5.
The blade emitter's too narrow.
That's gotta be a jab at the pencil sabers from Rebels, right? Point number 6. Caleb?
Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
Point number 7. Did anyone else get Ollivander from Harry Potter vibes when Hu Yang says he only has 2 blade emitters and we're both going to 2 separate but connected people? Point number 8.
AHSOKA became afraid that Sabine was training as a Jedi for the wrong reasons after what happened on Mandalore.
AHSOKA really has changed a lot since Rebels, considering this interaction between her and Vader on the topic of taking revenge.
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
I am no Jedi.
Point number 9.
Have you kept up with your training? I try.
Do or do not. There is no try.
I do.
Point number 10.
Being a Jedi isn't about wielding a lightsaber.
Having a laser sword doesn't make you a Jedi.
Point number 11. I can only assume these TIE fighter pilots didn't mind dying for Thrawn's cause. That must be why they didn't try to avoid crashing into Ahsoka's ship. They're essentially kamikaze pilots. Point number 12. I love how even though Thrawn says the chances of the good guys stopping him from leaving
Are now severely limited, if not impossible.
he still prepares for them to attack on the ground because he knows not to underestimate Jedi, especially when they're faced with a seemingly impossible task. Point number 13. So apparently Thrawn found the Great Mothers and woke them up, either from some technological form of stasis or a kind of deep meditation where their magic kept them from aging. I prefer the latter, more mystical option, as it fits more in my opinion. Point number 14, I can actually forgive the good guys surviving this gauntlet of laser fire from the Chimera, because it's just like how Force users are able to sense where blaster fire is coming from to know where to put their lightsaber to intercept it, or to just dodge it, exactly how they are dodging it here. Point number 15, so Ahsoka, Ezra and Sabine ride into the temple on their good boys, and then their good boys just completely vanish, only then to appear later having miraculously survived the temple being shot to pieces by the Chimera. What? Point number 16.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Or I guess they'll walk Peridia. This is not the first time we have seen Night Sisters use their magic to resurrect the dead, as they did so in the Clone Wars Season 4 Episode 19 Massacre to try and fight off General Grievous's invasion of Dathomir. And it's also not the first time we've seen undead stormtroopers in Star Wars. Zombie troopers actually made their first appearance in the 2009 novel Death Troopers set in 1 BBY. However, rather than being reanimated through magic, these dead were brought back to life via the Imperial Bioweapons Project I-71A, also known as The Sickness, the origin of which is revealed in the 2010 novel Red Harvest set in 3645 BBY. A long ass time ago. Point number 17, rewatching this scene, I first thought this trooper that Ezra slashes just messed up his choreography by forgetting to fall over, so he just launches himself down the stairs. That was, until I noticed Ahsoka boots his ass, and the force she puts into it almost causing her to fall backward made me laugh so hard. I watched this scene on loop like 10 times, just dying of laughter. Point number 18, you would have thought the troopers would have risen from the dead after the Great Mother shouted, "Arise!" But by the time they do, the zombie troopers have been up and moving for a while already. It's like if when casting Avada Kedavra in Harry Potter, the spell shot out of your wand after only saying Avada. What's the point then in saying the Kedavra part? Point number 19, there is a period of around 3 minutes from when Morgan tells Thrawn,
We are ready to depart, Grand Admiral.
and when Thrawn gives the order to
Take us out.
did they, for some reason, have to wait for Thrawn to make his way to the bridge of the Eye of Sion before moving the whole thing away from the temple? Couldn't Thrawn or Enoch, or I don't know, just someone have sent a transmission to the droid pilots to get the thing moving rather than having to waste 3 whole minutes waiting for someone to arrive on the bridge and give the order directly? Point number 20, people have questioned why Thrawn says,
For the Empire.
when shouldn't his allegiance to it have died along with it, and now he should only be focused on his own people, the Chiss Ascendancy? Well, the whole point of Thrawn interacting with the Empire and unexpectedly becoming a part of it was to determine if they could be used as allies / bait against the Grisk hegemony and other threats in the unknown regions of the galaxy, or whether they should be avoided or maybe even just completely destroyed if they turned out to be a threat to the Chiss Ascendancy. Thrawn viewed the Empire as a necessary evil. Though it was corrupt and tyrannical, it was also strong and unified under a single ruthless dictator, which he viewed as being necessary to face significant threats, unlike the Republic that he noted was fractured and full of constant political infighting between thousands of different leaders. He knew at some point the Emperor would die, and he hoped with his high rank he could influence who would be made the new Emperor, hoping for someone less tyrannical, but still strong enough to rule and hopefully enter into an official alliance with the Chiss Ascendancy. And that's why Thrawn is still aligning himself with the Empire. The Emperor is dead, as far as he knows, and so he will now try to bring together the Imperial remnant under his rule, conquer the New Republic, and ally his new empire with his people to face the threat of the Grisks and other hostile forces. Point number 21, the same thing applies to Morgan saying she's aligned with Thrawn and the Empire because she sees it as being best for the future of Dathomir, which will be part of Thrawn's new empire. A more stronger, unified, safer, securer society than the New Republic. Point number 22, Head Bonk Stormtrooper is no longer alone with this poor guy eating shit whilst running up the stairs. Point number 23, it's awesome to finally see Diana Lee in Ahsoka fight again because if you didn't know, she is a trained martial artist, as was her father Dan in Ahsoka, who was a student of none other than Bruce Lee himself, who was even Diana's godfather. And it's even more cool to see her using the half-swording technique, an actual technique where you use your offhand to support the blade of your sword, just like Morgan does throughout this fight. And if you want to learn more about half-swording, I highly recommend watching Scholar Gladiatoria's videos on that subject. They are really good. Point number 24, this 10-second long shot is art. The fluidity of their movements make it seem like they're dancing more than fighting, and even the slight pauses are so good because it's like they're gauging who's going to react first. It's up there with the Obi-Wan vs Anakin fight from Revenge of the Sith in terms of choreography, and even reminds me of the long shot fight between Neo and Morpheus in The Matrix. Point number 25, so yeah, these Death Troopers are literally Death Troopers, but you may be wondering, why do these Death Troopers look really zombified? Doesn't that mean they've been zombies for a long time? I do believe that is in fact correct, and I think we can even see the point when these two guys actually died in the final episode of Rebels. When Ezra makes it onto the bridge of their Chimera, he shoots these two Death Troopers. These two exact Death Troopers who Thrawn then got the Great Mothers to resurrect. That's how he already knew that the Great Mothers would be able to reanimate the Night Trooper volunteers he sent to slow down the good guys, and also begs the question, how many of Thrawn's other troops are already zombified? Point number 26, I can't understand the amount of bitching and crying Sabine force-pulling her lightsaber generated. People complaining that they thought she wasn't force sensitive and that she didn't have any training in using it. To the first point, it has never once been said that she wasn't force sensitive. In fact, the opposite was said by none other than Kanan Jarrus himself in Rebels Season 3 Episode 14, Trials of the Darksaber.
Or maybe because she doesn't have the Force, you don't believe she can do this?
No. The Force resides in all living things, but you have to be open to it. Sabine is blocked. Her mind is conflicted. She's so expressive and yet so tightly wound. She's so...
Mandalorian.
Ugh, very.
Everyone is force sensitive. It's just a question of how open to it they are initially and how willing they are to open themselves up to it further through training. I think we've even already seen an example of this with Han Solo of all people, the man who initially called the Force
A lot of simple tricks and nonsense.
and yet later came to believe the Force was real and pulled off this shot in The Force Awakens. No normal human pulls off this kind of a shot in Star Wars. I mean, it isn't like he heard the guy coming with all the TIE fighter, blaster and burning wreckage making a ton of noise. He sensed the dude, consciously knowing he was using the Force to do so. Probably not, but subconsciously, probably yes. Just like how Anakin was unknowingly using the Force to survive being a pod racer, a task that requires such quick reaction times no normal human would survive. And to the second point, as has been having received no Force training, do you really believe the only training she got from Ahsoka was purely combat related? Do you not think Ahsoka tried to get Sabine to open herself up to the Force before this show? Do you know how much training Luke had before he even used the Force to block the blasts from the training remote droid? Just a few words of encouragement from Obi-Wan seconds before he did. Do you know how much training Anakin had to survive being a pod racer? For Rey to pull off the stunt she did in the Falcon? For Ahsoka to tame the Sabretooth as a baby? For goddamn Broom Boy to be able to pull his broom into his hand?
None whatsoever.
They were just born open to the Force more than most people, born with more midichlorians, born with more natural talents. The entire reason Gideon wanted Grogu was so that he could pass on Grogu's natural talent with the Force to his clones, so that they wouldn't have to spend a long-ass time learning how to open themselves up to it. And even then, we don't even know if he actually did succeed in doing that, in making his clones more open to the Force, because Din killed them all before Gideon could find out. So anyway, Sabine, in this moment, becoming more open to the Force is also entirely justified because she's in a life or death situation. She's getting choked out by a Death Trooper, and Ezra can't help her, so using all of her might and will, she knocks down some of the barrier between her and the Force. It enters her, and the lightsaber flies into her hand. Point number 27, you can pretty much apply what I said in my previous point when Sabine also uses the Force to push Ezra. But I'd also like to counter the issue people have with this, which is, okay, I can maybe believe her Force pulling her lightsaber, but Force pushing Ezra? That's a big note from me. If you were to put all the Force powers into a skill tree, Force push and Force pull would be two of the first things you would unlock. They are the most basic of Force abilities, so I have zero issue with Sabine Force pushing Ezra. Also, people act like Sabine Force pushed Ezra perfectly so that he landed in the Chimera, but she didn't. He fell short. She wasn't able to Force push him hard enough because she's only just become more open to the Force. People need to stop acting like she's become a goddamn Mary Sue when she very clearly failed to Force push Ezra enough. A Mary Sue wouldn't have failed. In fact, a Mary Sue would have perfectly Force pushed themselves up there. Point number 28, speaking of pushing Ezra up onto the Chimera, are there no blast or emergency doors that could have been closed to ensure no one could make it onto the ship, like, at all? Point number 29, and now is finally the time where I'll bring up the other aspect of Mook chivalry. You remember that thing I mentioned all the way back in point number 2? TV tropes calls this aspect a mighty man stands alone, and it's where the Mooks stand by and watch whilst the hero, and in this case the dragon, fight each other. Also, I just want to mention, I didn't click on the link for the dragon until I started writing this point, so I didn't realise TV Tropes uses the example of Darth Vader being the dragon of Sidious, who is the big bad. I don't know why they decided to just stop shooting completely after having surrounded Ahsoka, since when they swarmed into the room Ahsoka and Morgan were initially having their dueling, they started blasting the moment they saw Ahsoka and just ran past Morgan. Maybe they've stopped shooting because they're worried they might accidentally hit Morgan, but then with them being zombies, I don't know if they're intelligent enough to be worried about something like that, but then they're brought back by magic, so they're not actually zombies, but I don't know. Maybe what the Great Mothers did to Morgan made it so that she now also has some control over the dead troopers, so she willed them to just stand by and watch because she wanted to fight Ahsoka alone. Point number 30, and this is why I don't take people calling Thrawn a dumbass idiot moron with all the intelligence of a shade gorilla seriously, because guess what, you losers? Thrawn won. This is him winning. I may take issue with some of the decisions he made, but I can accept the fact that what he did worked and he beat the good guys and won. Point number 31, Thrawn refers to Ahsoka as a Ronin, and you might be asking yourself, what is a Ronin? Well, a Ronin is a samurai who has no lord or master, and in some cases has severed all ties with their family or clan, which quite accurately describes Ahsoka, who has no master and left the Jedi Order. But some people don't like that Thrawn called her this. Not because they think she isn't a Ronin or anything, but because Ronin is a Japanese word, and so they find it weird to call Ahsoka a Ronin when the Japanese language isn't a thing in the Star Wars galaxy. Just like how it'd be weird if Star Wars characters said the word rendezvous, because French doesn't exist in the Star Wars galaxy, or gorilla, because Spanish doesn't exist in the Star Wars galaxy, or etc., because Latin doesn't exist in the Star Wars galaxy, etc., etc., etc. Point number 32, the owl Ahsoka sees here is called Morai, and she isn't actually an owl, but a convor.
Condor.
It's a dinosaur.
No, not a condor, convor, or Trandoshan bird if you like. And Morai is a very special convor as she's connected to the daughter who was, for lack of a better term, one of the Force gods Anakin, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan encountered on Mortis during the Clone Wars. Or would that be in Mortis, since it isn't so much a planet but rather an ethereal realm? I don't know. Anyway, the daughter, along with father and son, each represented aspects of the Force. Daughter, the light side, son, the dark side, and father, the control over each, keeping them balanced. In the Clone Wars Season 3, Episode 16, Altar of Mortis, the son ends up killing Ahsoka and then accidentally stabbing his sister when he attempted to murder his father with the dagger of Mortis, but daughter stepped in the way of his blow. As she was dying, daughter convinced her father to transfer her power into Ahsoka to bring her back to life. After that, Morai began to appear whenever Ahsoka was around and played a significant role in saving her from Darth Vader by getting Ezra to pull her into the World Between Worlds in the 13th episode of Rebels Season 4, appropriately named A World Between Worlds. And it was in this episode that we first learned the convor's name was Morai from Ahsoka, who refers to her as
She's an old friend. I owe her my life.
Which implies that rather than just being a pet or familiar of the daughter, Morai is in some form the daughter herself. Either that or Morai herself saved Ahsoka's life at some point. Point number 33, so Shin, rather than trying to find her master, has decided to become the Queen of the Nomads. Good for her. Point number 34, and speaking of the father, son and daughter, here we see Balin standing at depictions of them carved out of a mountain, though notably the daughter is separated from her father and brother and has had her head destroyed. And you might be thinking, well, Triple S, you told us she died in the Clone Wars, so maybe that's why her image has crumbled away. Well, what if I were to tell you that the father and the son also died? The father by stabbing himself with the dagger of Mortis, which he did so to rob the son of his immortality, thus allowing Anakin to kill him. Anyway, Balin is standing on the finger of Father, who is pointing to a shining light atop a peak in the distance. It's been speculated that this peak could be the monastery that we see on/in Mortis, or at the very least one like it. If this is indeed the case, the father, the daughter and son are all dead, so who is living there that is calling to Balin? It could be a Mora equivalent of the father or the son, or it could very well be Mother. And before all of you who know who Mother is start freaking out that she's only been in Legends before and there's no proof it's her calling to Balin, just calm down. This is only speculation, just a theory, just an idea. In Legends, father, daughter and son, known as the Ones, didn't originally live on/in Mortis but on Mother's home planet. Initially, Mother was just servant, a mortal woman who served the Ones and helped Father control son and daughter. As she grew older, she became Mother, and then when she became elderly and began to fear dying and no longer being part of the family, she drank from the font of power, just like the son did, which made him part of the dark side, and then swam in the pool of knowledge, just like the daughter did, which made her part of the light side. Doing both, however, turned Mother into a corrupted, evil, twisted, immortal entity now known as Abeloth. She used her new power to subdue daughter and son, but father protected them and the Ones left the planet, stranding Abeloth there and making her fear of no longer being part of the family a reality. After that, to combat her loneliness, Abeloth would call out via the Force to all who could hear her, drawing them to her. So the theory goes that Peridia was the original home planet of the father, daughter and son and Abeloth, the latter of which is trapped there still, but it's calling out to Balin to presumably get him to help her escape. If, however, it isn't Abeloth but somehow some form of the son, this goes to the theory that since father wanted Anakin to take his place as keeper of the balance and that daughter gave her life to Ahsoka, Balin then may end up taking the place of the son in some fashion. My best bet on that theory is on the spirit of the son either possessing Balin or stealing his life force as a reversal of the daughter giving her life to save Ahsoka. But saying that, I think it'd be cooler if they made Abeloth canon. Point at number 35, these shots of Thrawn and the Great Mothers looking down on the cargo reminds me a lot of the shots at the end of Attack of the Clones with Palpatine and others looking down at all the clones. Point number 36, the only reason I can think of for Ezra stepping out of the ship in full Night Trooper armor is because he's already fallen so deep into depression about Ahsoka, Sabine and Huyang being left behind that he really wants someone to shoot him and put him out of his misery. I'm sorry, that was just way too dark, but I mean, Ezra, we all know you like to dress up as a stormtrooper a lot in Rebels, but this was the worst way to do a callback to that. You could have actually been shot, you fool. Point number 37, yeah, more Hayden Christensen. Though, do you think it was actually Anakin that Sabine was sensing, or since she's now more open to the Force, is whatever's calling to Balin also now calling to her? To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to the lack of Balin and Shin scenes. Yes, I know this episode was all about the good guys trying to get onto the Chimera, so it focused solely on them, but I just love Shin and Balin so much, I want to see more of them. And my most liked part of the episode goes to the sword fight between Morgan and Ahsoka. That 10-second long wide shot is just fantastic. Before we end, I just want to say rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. You were absolutely amazing and one of the best parts of this show. You were taken from this world far too early, and I wish you could have seen all the love and support the fans have for you. You will be greatly missed. Thank you all so much for tuning into the Triple S Variety channel. Don't forget to do the 3 S's, and also why not leave a comment below pointing out anything I missed but you noticed. I would love to hear from you all. I've been Triple S, you've all been amazing, and I shall see you all in the next video.